Hello there, and you're very welcome to the programme. And I hope that this week, like last week, that you will participate in the programme. We have 2 free phone numbers from you that will be available right throughout the programme, and the numbers will be flashed up throughout the programme. One from this part of the world and one from Northern Ireland. Stories from home and from abroad this week, and we're going to start with a home-based one. Take a look at this.
Jason Sherlock. There's nobody running through. He gets past Mark O'Connor. There's a goal here. There it is. Jason, the darling of Dublin, has lifted the siege. The one and only chance. Mark O'Connor was doing so well, but when he hit the ground, Jason Sherlock hit the back of the net.
Jason Sherlock, the darling of Dublin, and I have to say, that would have been my view of Jason Sherlock and the kind of experience I would have expected him to have. So I was astonished this week when I heard him talking about how he could understand how Cantona flipped at Crystal Palace, because he said he also has been provoked by racist comments and remarks, and he could understand how it got to Cantona. Well, I'm joined in studio tonight by Quintus Pillai and Gary Quinn. Quintus, you are a businessman. You've been living in Ireland for
7 years.
7 years. Can you understand what Jason Sherlock was talking about, how Cantona might have reacted?
I could understand it in the context that when you're successful and not of a local nature, there is a sort of an envy, and I could understand the reaction from the person who's trying to do a great job.
What has happened to you? I mean, you've experienced racism here in Dublin.
Sadly, I've experienced it in full-blown attack here in Dublin, and I've lived in Europe for 28 years, and I'm very, very sad to state that it happened here.
Give me some idea of what you're talking about.
I travel worldwide, and my wife and children are on their own. They have been verbally, racially attacked by a couple within the estate, and the couple have canvassed their views to other neighbors around, and they've also manipulated the children to attack my children, not only within the neighborhood, but also it has gone further to the schools. And as an example, when I came back from a very tough business negotiation in France, and I came back home, and I had won a very major contract, and the comment that was made to me when I just came out of my car was, "We pay taxes for foreign idiots like you, so watch what you do in my country." When I came back from Israel, I was very sad to note that the police were there, and my wife has been racially abused with all the 4-letter words as well. And when my son tried to stop this neighbor, he was challenged for a fight. My children were crying. My daughter asked me whether I would only come if they are found dead. And the police were in, but they were unable to do anything at all.
Now, you're involved in the telecommunications industry,
Yes.
and I gather that you travel, as it were, selling Ireland.
Absolutely. Not only selling the products of Ireland, but I also sell the positive culture of Ireland, because my family and myself, we have a very positive view of the Irish people. And it is very important that I express the fact that the majority of the Irish people should not be branded for the very insecure views of a very small minority. But the saddest fact is that due to the innocence of the Irish people, they are being drawn innocently and unknowingly, children and adults. And it's important for the parents of these children around us to know that their children are being manipulated, and it's caused a breeding ground for hatred.
Now, you have had to, your family's had family therapy, counselling?
My family and we had to go for family therapy. My eldest daughter had to have 2 counseling sessions. All my children and my wife were found to have very high stress levels by our local doctor, and she wanted to know what the hell was going on. And it was very difficult for us to openly state that it was a situation, because we personally do not believe in racialism. We personally don't like the black and white issue.
Right.
And it is sad that this has come about by a couple who are creating hatred action, a campaign.
Now, you travel a lot for your work, and you say it gets worse for your family when you're away.
When I'm away, the situation is absolutely wild. I remember I was in Israel negotiating a deal, and I had a very urgent call, and it was for my wife, and it was action, and they are literally under high stress level. And in many occasions, when I'm prepared to leave home, the situation is hectic because they're literally stressed out. And when we were in Geneva, my kids were verbally abused by 2 adults.
And I gather that you now are making arrangements for, you're going on a world tour shortly.
I'm going on a world tour by the end of May. Last year to prevent, because I'm saying this with understanding but with sadness, that because the Garda have not been helpful and because of the relative TDs that I've written to a former Minister of Justice and a present Minister of Justice, because of their inability to act, I spent around £4,500 flying my family away while I'm away, and right now I'm spending another £2,000 for my wife and children to go away while I do the world tour on behalf of Ireland.
Gary Quinn, I mean, does this astonish you, or are these commonplace stories to you?
Well, it shocks me, but it's very sad to say that it doesn't surprise me anymore. I work for the Irish Refugee Council, and we run a project called the City's Anti-Racism Project, which is an initiative of the Council and of the European Commission to combat racism in urban areas specifically, because the Commission recognised that throughout Europe racism is growing within urban areas, and that there are very similar reasons for that racist growth in the city. So we've taken on this project to address that, and also to address the concerns of our own clients, the refugee community themselves. The refugee community at the moment represent 51 different nationalities that are living mostly within Dublin City. Now they're quite small numbers. In some cases maybe one person from each nationality, in others are much larger numbers. But we have noticed over the past 2 to 3 years there has been a distinct increase in cases such as Quintus has related. And so it's very sad, but it doesn't surprise me to hear what I'm hearing tonight.
I mean, there was always the suspicion that there was no racism here because there just weren't people. There weren't immigrants, and there weren't people like Quintus who come and work here, and there just weren't people around who looked different. So it would appear that it is latent and it is there.
It's very certainly there, and in fact the ability to show it, I think, like racism itself, people that I've spoken to recently in the media and in different areas feel very much that racism directed against non-nationals is something very separate to the racism that has been directed against the travelling community, though the rest of Europe have recognised, and in every piece of literature you read about racism in Europe, you give the travelling communities problems here, grief, as an example of racism in Europe. And it's as if the two things are separate, as if racism against non-nationals is something very separate from that, though.
And you said the reasons are similar. What are the reasons?
The reasons, well, the reasons that are given are pretty basic, and I wouldn't accept them. The fact that people would be coming here for jobs, stealing our jobs, this kind of attitude, which just isn't viable, and it doesn't stand up to scrutiny. The reasons it exists, there are a number, I would believe, within society itself. Our education system does not address
difference.
Difference, exactly.
Yeah.
But I agree with that comment, but I travel worldwide, and the image of the basic Irish person is one of a very friendly culture, a very
we sell
charitable
that,
culture. And I personally, and my wife and children, believe in that. Even though we've gone through this experience, I think what's important to relate is worldwide you have minority people of this nature. What is important is, in order to counteract that, and what is also important to understand is that they take advantage of the loopholes of the law. And when you have people in public offices ignoring these issues, I would be very protective, without being critical to the Garda, I have to understand their issue. There should be a book of rules for them to follow.
Yeah, you reported this to the Gardaí.
And my family made about 5 or 6 complaints last year to the police. The Garda came over. I contacted Mr. Sean Ryan, TD, who was the only person who made some response. And when he called me the second time, he said, "I'm very surprised to tell you that the Garda do not have a record of any of your complaints. Would you kindly and urgently put an official letter of complaint?" And I personally handed it over at 6 o'clock on the 24th of September to the Garda. And it's been about a year now. We did have a visit by a local Garda very recently because a newspaper is doing the investigation. But he was more interested to indicate that this isn't an issue, and he also indicated that they had not received the official complaint. But when I told him that I left it at 6 o'clock in the morning, and I then sent a copy to TD Sean Ryan to the Parliament. That was...
What can the Gardaí do under legislation?
Well, at the moment, the only legislation we have to protect against incidents such as this is the
Incitement to
Hatred Act,
yeah.
which covers the publication or the transmission of material which may incite people to hate.
Yeah.
There are 2 pieces of legislation that have been proposed and have been in that position for quite a long time, which is the Employment Equality Bill, which would protect minority groups within the employment field, and the Equal Status legislation, which would protect in terms of provision of services, tax, etc.
Yeah.
Both of those have been in production stage, or they've been getting those together, we'll say, for, as I understand it, close to 5 years. Each successive government has said they will produce it, and they will produce it. We're in a situation now where they say they will produce them, one before the summer, the Employment Equality Bill before the summer, and Equal Status legislation before the end of this year. There appears to have been great concern from various sections of society who are standing against it and are lobbying to prevent it being taken in. I don't know the full details behind that and which groups exactly are lobbying, but we are aware that it's different. More than one group is lobbying to change it and to exclude certain sections of it.
Okay, we have a caller on the line. Conor, good afternoon to you, or good evening to you, sorry.
Good evening,
Slip into old habits. Now, you're coordinator of the youth campaign against racism and discrimination. You're running a campaign at the moment. Can you tell me the background to what you're doing and why you're doing it?
Yeah, we're an educational campaign. So we start from the basis that all of us hold prejudice. All of us are afraid of difference. All of us have certain ignorance. We, as young people, everybody goes through a stage where they reject out groups. Sometimes people get stuck at those levels. And also people have interests that they want to protect, as Gardaí referred to already. What we're doing in our campaign is we try to approach those 4 issues, and we try to lead through an educational process whereby young people can become appreciative of difference, strengthen their own identity, becoming appreciative of difference, and looking at the structures in society which perpetuate such discrimination. And
yeah, that
so
all sounds lovely and kind of rosy, but I mean, practically, this is outrageous. I mean, what can a campaign do? What can anything do other than legislation if the Gardaí can't intervene and if we can't say, sorry, this isn't acceptable?
Yeah, there's each of the various elements are necessary. Gardaí is working directly, Gardaí Quinn there with you, is working directly with people who, some of whom are victims of racist attacks. Our campaign is an educational campaign, and we've got resources available for that. And then also there's the third element is legislation, which is also necessary. So we would encourage people to take part in the education so as to prevent this occurring, and also in legislation so as to be able to, the law to be actually able to stop people who do act in a racist manner.
Thanks, Conor, for that. You got very little response, you say, from the TDs. Just one TD responded to you.
One TD responded because I have been making a lot of calls to these people, and basically I was pleading And this was during my overseas tours. I was calling these TDs to say, can you please help my wife and children? They are being racially attacked right now. And I had to then call my wife. And I think very, very few people understand this serious.
Can I put another question to you? You have made friends here. Can they not in any way, I don't know, give support, be there?
Well, the fact is, unlike this couple who canvassed their views, we never went around canvassing it.
I can understand.
The friends understood the problem. They have been in there many ways trying to help. Some people have come to our house continually. Some have offered to be there while I'm away. But you've got to understand, these are simple, wonderful Irish people. They should not be burdened with a situation that people in public offices should put some form of law to counteract.
And I get the feeling that you don't even like the fact that you're here talking about it.
I don't like the fact of talking about racism and black and white situation, because the way we have taught our kids is to look at everybody as humans. I'm running a division. I have people, majority Irish people, and they're more than welcome to be questioned by anybody, and the way I treat them is totally as human beings, and I've given them the top recognition, and I'm proud of my Irish team. And I've got another gentleman from France. We are a team of human beings, and I've got a young lady there who's the best, and I treat them as humans.
Right. And then you deal with this at home.
And we have to deal with this. And the important thing is, we have to, my wife and I have to continually educate our children that this is not an Irish situation. There are several types of human beings in the world, and you get the odd one with a very sad sickness. And don't be like that. So we do not wish to be in their level.
Right.
We have to be one level ahead and have the patience. But the fact is...
Hard not to be bitter.